Hello, good evening, and welcome to the collective. My name is Leah Bowden, and tonight is the All Booked Book Club. We actually skipped a month, totally my fault. Usually we read a book over a 2 month, we still have read it over 2 months, but usually we get to discuss it in two halves. But due to my overly full schedule and various other things going on, I had to ask for our book club apologies, and we are going to be discussing the whole of Wide Sargasso Sea by Jean Rees this evening. So I am in a Zoom room, a live Zoom room, but I know many of you, in fact, probably most of you, are watching or listening on the replay, as I know we have time zones all over the world. And also here in the UK, we have got some beautiful weather this week. So I'm sure many people are making the most of that. And I am sat now with my window wide open, listening to the birds. So you'll see the sun dip low and I'll start to put lights on, but it's a gorgeous night and I hope it's gorgeous where you are. So we are going to be discussing Wide Sargasso Sea. I do have people in the room. Nobody currently has their camera on. Some people are struggling, some people are getting kids to bed, some people are nipping into stores, but please do I obviously a book club's not a book club unless other people join in the conversation. So you hear enough of my voice and I would love to hear it from you. So whether that is you guys putting it in the chat or just unmuting and talking, that's absolutely fine as well. But that does make the most of our time together. So get yourself active in the chat now. If you're going to be just contributing in the chat, do let me know. And but if you're watching on the replay or listening on the replay, I'm going to try and put more things out as a audible file, audio file as well. Sometimes it's easier if you're getting stuff done around the house just to listen to it from the app. If you are doing that, I will read out as much as possible from the chat. So we have spent the last couple of months reading Wide Sargasso Sea. I actually have two copies of it. This is the copy I bought for us to use for our book club because I didn't have a copy any longer. And then when I was where was I? I was in Bristol recently, and there was kind of a flea market in the middle of the town. And I saw this copy for, I think it was £1. And this is the exact copy I had when I first read the book when I was a teenager. I do believe I read it when I was a teenager. And I think, yeah, it was this publisher, this imprint, and I had to get it. And it even has that lovely musty smell. Smells like a book from my teens. But that's how long ago it was. So I decided to read from this one. So I have this, I did flick through this as well. So we have these two. I don't know what copy you guys have been reading, but these are the two I have here. So we have this book is in 3 parts, and we have our usual time, which is just over an hour, depending on how long people can hang around for. But we're going to discuss the book in its 3 parts. Obviously, one part is much bigger. Part two is the bulk of the book. So the first part, it's mainly Antoinette's voice. The middle part is mainly Rochester's voice. And the end, we've got a few different voices in there, haven't we? Starts with Grace Poole and various other things. So those of you, if you are just popping on the replay just to see, oh, what is this book about? This is the story, this is the imaginary story of so we've just read Jane Eyre, obviously, and in the story of Jane Eyre, Rochester has a woman in the attic called Bertha that we discover. And the whole story, this book is the backstory, supposedly, the backstory of her story, her life, her origin story. And it is set in the Caribbean. And we have this whole, just a completely different setting and characters. And I don't know about you guys, but even the emotional commitment to this book and the emotions that it took me through whilst keeping it wasn't until part 3 when I really started thinking more about Jane Eyre that it was playing with my emotions really as I was was kind of tussling with that, like how I used to feel about Rochester and how I now feel, and how I used to I was very indifferent to Bertha, and then this book you really do the journey with her. So what I'd love to hear first from those who are going to contribute this evening, I would just love to hear um, overall feelings. That would be helpful. I think we often do this when we were reading through the volumes. We did this stand back statement, which I think is sometimes helpful to then get us ready to launch into discussing those three different parts. So it doesn't matter if you want to pick a detail out or you want to pick a character out. It doesn't matter at all. Let's just get talking. Let's get the ball rolling. Thank you, Erica, putting your camera on. Demel's is here. Obviously, the kids are settled. So who would like to kick us off and give us your kind of overall view? Also, tell me if it's your first time reading it or you've read it before. That kind of stuff is helpful to who would like to go first. Erica's up.
I'll jump right in. So this was my first time reading the book, and being a big Jane Eyre fan, I feel like I came into this very biased. Um,
Yes.
very hard time believing that it was the same Rochester, I guess if that made sense. I didn't feel that Reese, I don't know, for me it wasn't compelling that it was truly him. Um, this book was difficult. I love how you mentioned the emotional journey it took you through because I was not prepared for this, but this book felt very personal for me coming from a mixed Caribbean background. And so a
Yeah.
lot of these themes were very familiar. Both my mother and my stepmother are Caribbean, both mixed of indigenous and African descent. And so the idea of Creole and mulatto and
Yeah.
those differences being pointed out were very familiar to me for my childhood, for my upbringing. Even the ideas of indigenous religion, for my Puerto Rican background, that's Santeria as opposed to Obeah. But yeah, it was I was not prepared for that. And so I very much understood the dynamic of what was going
Right.
on between Antoinette and the Jamaicans. Um, and I also found the Jamaicans' rejection, if you will, of Christophine also interesting. And just,
Yeah.
I think that outsiders don't realize how, I guess, how prejudiced islanders are against each other, because it's the
Right.
truth. So yeah, that was just kind of like a surprise. But overall, I think I pitied Antoinette's character. I think that it was her backstory was painted very clearly. Um, so I would agree feeling less indifferent towards Bertha. Definitely annoyed with Rochester for not being
Hmm.
able to understand her and placing that nickname on her. Although I feel like he meant it affectionately, but she was not receiving it that way, and he wasn't hearing her, or understanding her. And so it was just interesting. There was so much conflict in the book.
So much. And as from the beginning, when she went to, was she wiping her mother's tears or putting, she went to touch her mother's face and her mother kind of pushed her away. I mean, she did it a few times, but from that moment, I was like, oh, somebody hug this girl. Like, she just wants to be loved. She just wants to be loved. And I did that journey with her, really. Like, even right to the end, I was just like, man, what the conflict in me of even I mean, I wrote loads of questions down, and this is my second reading, but as first time as a adult reading it, really. Um, but I remember I wrote down tons of questions about the mental health, the madness of how much was that, we're jumping right in here, but how much was that um drawn out and almost uh made worse, okay, I can use better words, because of, was it all to do with, was it hereditary, or was it to do with, it was right from childhood, it was kind of spoken over her and spoken into the family, and then it went from verbal to letter writing to just like, well, we're just going to live as if you are mad. And that, I had this big thing in my head, and I was writing down loads of stuff to do with that. But anyway, we can park that. um but I did pity her. Yeah. Thank you for that. Have you heard of the book before, Erica?
I had a
Okay. I don't know if you remember Demelza. It was on the British syllabus. Did you read it? I'm trying to remember. You were muting.
I've read it before, but I'd had this is my second time reading it. I read it probably when I was in my late teens, maybe early 20s.
Okay.
Um, so yeah, and having been a big fan of Jane Eyre, when I read this, it really made me think about that backstory for her because in Jane Eyre, I didn't really think about her at all. Like the whole, emphasis in my mind was like, you're feeling so sorry for the relationship between Rochester and Jane and everything, and and the sort of mad wife in the attic is, not really, you don't feel much pity for her really, to be honest. But reading this,
Yeah.
you just think, oh my gosh, that poor girl, she never stood a chance really, did she?
No.
Whether she got something hereditary going on as well, or whether she was just, living through that horrendous situation. Yeah, I thought, gosh, yeah, there wasn't much hope from the beginning for her, to be honest.
I know. I know. I I picked up this book last year. I think it's a British book. It's called Reading Lessons: The Books We Read at School, the Conversations They Spark, and Why They Matter. And this is, I think I must have picked it up last year, but this is what reminded me. I was like, did I actually read it as part of a preparation for an exam? So they, at some point on the GCSE syllabus, they taught Jane Eyre and Why Sargasso Sea together. So I didn't get a chance to do much more research on that, but there's a whole, I won't go into this. This is just kind of, it's actually not it's not particularly living. It's a little bit dry, but anyway, it's an interesting just to hop into. After I'd read them both, I thought, oh, I'll have a look at this. But it's just it's kind of a dry explanation of the both the books. But they do often, yeah, tie them both together. So I wondered if anybody else had read it at school, if you are a fellow Brit here. Yes,
I read it
okay,
at
great.
university.
Oh, university, did
Yeah,
you?
I was
Okay.
I it was the first time I came across it. It was in the first year of my undergraduate. Was We did the canon and its discontents. So it was supposed to
Huh.
be Jane Eyre, like the opposite of Jane Eyre. We did quite a few sort of other side novels. Um, I
Oh,
didn't.
that's interesting.
I did have it on my shelf, and then I must have got rid of it because I couldn't find it when we needed to read it again.
No,
So,
I couldn't find mine. Yeah. So
so I borrowed it from the library.
how did you find it this time?
Um, I like reading stuff as an adult that I'd read
Me
previously
too.
because yeah, it's you've got so much more behind you that you can understand it. The characters are so much more complex when you read them as an adult. Um,
Yeah.
so I yeah, I found it was all the characters were quite complex. You go to like them, then you don't like them. I still don't like Mr. Rochester. Didn't like him in Jane Eyre.
Mm-mm.
Still don't like him now. But it wasn't quite the same character. I do, and I agree. It didn't feel like it was actually the same person, but there was a little bit. They did actually write him sympathetically in terms of his situation and going to the Caribbean. So yeah,
Yeah. I felt a little bit of compassion towards him as he first entered the story.
mm.
And then
Just first, yeah.
um like literally a few pages. And then when again I was reflecting on this a few days ago as well, the shift in his anger and bitterness when that all kinds of when that happens and you can hear it in the vocabulary and in the conversation, the dialogue, he changes after that when he goes on that walk and he's drinking and he finds the road and all that kind of stuff and all that's going on. And that took me to his character in Jane Eyre when he was just grumpy about everything in that first meeting. I was like, oh, there's the Rochester we know. Yeah, and it shifted for me immediately. And then I felt pity for Antoinette again. Um, Shannon, do you want to jump in with your first kind of thoughts here? Anything you want to say? I don't know if you are actually
Right.
driving or.
No, so my only I just did not grasp why he would have need to if he felt like he had to take her back to England instead of just let her go. If he really felt like he had been poisoned and he hated her so much, that was just the bizarre ending to that. It didn't make a lot of sense. That was, yeah, I'm with you. Didn't really like him in the book, especially as he just started hating her, and then his indiscretions with the maid or the housekeeper. I'm not sure what her role was.
Oh, did we lose her? We lost her. Okay, sorry, we lost her. Oh, she's on. I think she might be on twice. I think you're on twice, Shannon. Oh, you were on twice.
I'm just.
Oh, there you are.
I'm sitting here still. Yeah, I don't know why I keep having Wi-Fi. I'm sorry. I don't want to interrupt
It's
your
okay.
thing, but
No, not at all.
I don't know if you heard. I struggled with him, and the way he treated her. And then if he really, like, I was like, well, was he really poisoned? Is that even legitimate? It was just all in his imagination. And he couldn't, if he felt he was tricked into the marriage and he hated her, so why didn't he let her go versus locking her up?
Yeah.
For me, that drew back. That's, I think, one part, or for me, it was a little bit more believable of him being the same Rochester, because he has his honor. He has the gentleman's honor code. And one, I think he wouldn't leave her for that reason. And two, he's painted as knowing the rumors that would just go about him. And I think he just wanted to shut that down. I think he wanted a clean separation from Jamaica. And I think he probably anticipated, I don't know if that story would follow him back to England, but I think he wouldn't have wanted to leave that window of possibility. Because he talks about how he knows that they were probably already making songs, or would turn it into songs, the jokes about him.
Yeah.
And if they're married, she bears his name now, and there's going to forever be her presence there if he left her. It's one of the only parts for me that made sense. I had a hard time understanding his thoughts. The way that Reese writes them felt disjointed for me.
Do we know if and I didn't look this up, I probably should have, if Charlotte, I just said the wrong name. If Charlotte Bronte actually had a real reason why she was this way, or if that was ever something she mentioned.
Maybe Demelza knows. Do you know, I don't remember anything like that. I'm just wondering from your deep study of alternatives. Oh, you're still muted. Yes. It's okay. Hang on. Let me see if I can ask you to unmute. There we go. There we go.
There you go. No, I don't remember anything like that. Like I say, I think I had a friend who did an undergraduate English literature degree very recently, and I was like, I really should have done it in my 40s because it makes so much more sense. I don't think that you don't get it when you're 19, do you? So
not at all. No. And I know. I actually fell in love with it all at 19, 20. And that's when I first read Jane Eyre and all that kind of stuff. But actually, no, I think I was more like 16 when I read Jane Eyre. But yeah, a deeper understanding, and even taking it a lot slower and not having to read it for an exam. What a joy. I mean, that was just like, oh, nobody's going to ask me a whole lot of questions about this. You see,
I've got the Elizabeth Gaskell book, The Life of Charlotte Bronte. It's sitting in my lounge, but I haven't read it. So I don't know whether it says anything in there.
Yes.
Why did she have Rochester in the Caribbean, in the West Indies, like as a character? That it's interesting why she chose to do that. Who did she know? Where did she get her information from?
Well, yes, because the Brontes, their worlds were very small. Their world was very small. And so their imaginations really were the proponents of all these stories, and the conversations they had in the rectory with visitors, their father's guests around the table. So who knows who they entertained and the stories they heard. That would be from what I do know of them and the stuff I have read. But we don't really know, do we? There's a did watch. Is a film, isn't there, about Emily? I'm trying to think. It wasn't amazing, but they bring it up in there, like asking her, how did you write Wuthering Heights? Like, how on earth did you imagine that relationship and that passion? And she just stays quiet. It's interesting. Okay, well, let's jump into part one and let's try and break it up if we can. If we end up jumping around, it's fine. It's just a good old book club. So part one, this is the childhood. This is Antoinette's childhood, and we've got the fire here. We meet her mother, and we hear the story of her mother's life. We've got the fire, we've got the parrot and the clipped wings, and we have all this imagery beginning, which, for those who end up or have, study this book for a year or two, you do go into the detail. I do remember doing that of all the imagery that comes through it, whether it was meant or not, intended or not by the author. So let's just a few things that I picked up on. I naturally read through when I read any book, just because of the past 20 odd years of my life of being drenched in Charlotte Mason's work, but also just from my childhood. I read through a lens of nature and literature. I see it everywhere. I see it, and that is often what stands out to me. And we do all have our own filters, don't we? That we will immediately see things and we start to understand things. So I read the book and it was very visual for me. I don't always experience books like that, but this was really visual, and the repetition, the going back of the seeing and feeling the setting of the Caribbean and the colours and the vibrancy, but then also for both Rochester and Antoinette, their varying levels of hatred for it. I hate the mountains, I hate, and they start to go into that. I really felt that. It was interesting how that made me feel. How can you hate something so beautiful? So that kind of starts in those early few pages. I did a deep dive into the painting that she talks about, because of course I would. So I did a little bit of research, and I shared the picture on Substack, The Miller's Daughter. And that was interesting, just doing a little bit of research on that, because it's not a particular standout picture to me. And there are many other paintings called The Miller's Daughter. But this image comes to her at the end of the book, doesn't it? If you remember, she is right at the end. She's almost going through visually, things are coming back to her. And one of those things, and I'll come back to that as we get back to part 3, is the painting of The Miller's Daughter. And what's interesting, and I'll say this one last thing and then you guys can jump in, is that the Miller's daughter's dress is slightly falling off her shoulder. And it's this kind of floating dress. So there's all this image, this kind of possibilities of Antoinette romanticizing England, or romanticizing this countryside life in this English looking woman. If you remember, there's the whole thing with Rochester and the dress that he likes her in, and so she says, shall I make another one? And I think it's a white dress she makes. And then there's a part of the book where he said it's falling off her shoulder, but it actually kind of rather than it being alluring, it kind of goes, oh, I think it's too big for her. But the picture of the Miller's Daughter, the dress is coming off her shoulder as well. So there's so many things that I got when I was actually deep diving into that, which is really interesting. So that comes up quite a few times from childhood, and then we get this. I mean, there's so much foreshadowing, isn't it? So yeah, we've got that at the end as well. But if you haven't seen it yet on Substack, I do post a picture of the Miller's Daughter on there. Let me find this bit I was going to share. And then we also have her experience with the nuns and her schooling, and the beginning of the the colours like red and fire, this all starts to happen in part one. We could probably, there's a whole thread of that running through the whole book. Okay, oh, here we go. I'll just read a little bit. This is in my book, it's page 30. Myra came in again looking mournful as she always did, though she smiled when she talked about hell. Everyone went to hell, she told me. You had to belong to her sect to be saved, and even then, just as well not to be too sure. She had thin arms and big hands and feet, and the handkerchief she wore around her head was always white, never striped or a gay colour. So I looked away from her at my favourite picture, the miller's daughter, a lovely English girl with brown curls and blue eyes and a dress slipping off her shoulders. Then I looked across the white tablecloth and the vase of yellow roses at Mr. Mason, so sure of himself, so without a doubt English, and at my mother, so without a doubt not English. I won't carry on there. Okay. So there we have the miller's daughter bit there. And then what? Well, I'll let you guys jump in. So part one, anything you want, jump in anywhere there. I've got various bits folded down.
I love how the imagery, I feel like it, right off the surface, right? She's describing paradise, and it's anything but for all the characters.
Yeah.
And those images and those landscapes, when you're presented with them in person, are just, they elicit such strong emotion. And I think, I would imagine that that's intentionally written that way because the characters are resisting strong emotion.
Yes.
I think for Rochester, it's un-English, but for Antoinette, it's just trauma. It invokes the memories.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah. There's lots, she talks a lot, doesn't she, in part one about the sound of the bamboo. I thought that was interesting because there's a real repetition with that. What the bamboo sounds like, even if it's not moving, she always seems to hear it. That's something else I pointed out there.
Water is another common theme repeated throughout the book.
Yeah. Yeah, I went into Pierre's room, which was next to mine, the last one in the house. The bamboos were outside his window. You could almost touch them. And then later on, she talks about the sound of him. Oh, and it was then I heard the bamboos creak again and a sound like whispering. I forced myself to look out of the window. There was a full moon, but I saw nobody, nothing but shadows. There's so many times, aren't there, when it talks about the shadows or feeling like people are behind them. And Rochester does it when he's out walking. She does it. I mean, Antoinette does it. And then we obviously get that when we get the ghost kind of appearance and the sensing in Jane Eyre as well. But this always something behind them, always something in the shadows. Okay. Anybody else like to bring something else out about from part one?
I don't have my book with me, but I remember when she's walking one time and she talks about that the whatever she's brushing up against cuts less painful than the way people cut her with their
yes.
Like I wrote that down. I remember
when she's at school, right? That's when she's yeah. I remember that bit. Melza.
And I read it. I read things far too fast, and so I have to then try and listen to it. But then that slows it right down. So I read it a while ago, like for the first book club, and then haven't done it since. But I was just looking at it now. I just had this feeling in that first part. It took me ages to get my head around the history. I don't have any like personal connection to like the Caribbean. You know, I've been here in England, well, I'm in Wales now, all my life. But so I didn't really understand all of the sort of the colonial references. I really had to try and work out who all these different people were. And like somebody said earlier, why nobody, like the politics and the sort of the relationships there are so so disjointed. And I just, the whole first part of the book gave me that feeling of nobody likes being there, really. Nobody wants to be there. Nobody feels that they belong there. And there's that whole, very much a sense of like who does belong where, and where is home. Just that's just a very general impression. I think probably throughout the whole book, but certainly in that first part when she's a child, who am I? And where do I fit?
It is interesting. I mean, for my third book that's coming out in my series, I've done lots of research because it's about Sarah Forbes Bonetta. So I kind of, but not Caribbean, that was West Africa. But it's interesting, so many things that were similarities and correlations when I was reading this about what I've written and what I've researched and just delving into. But what Erica was just saying about this almost description of paradise, it should be paradise. So there's these beautiful places, and it's a bit like Sierra Leone and Freetown, and then we've got Spanish Town and Jamaica, and these set up to be emancipated and free and come and live in these beautiful, incredible places. But actually, they were just as oppressed. And I was writing down things like there was, you know, emancipation had happened, but revelation and education hadn't happened. So there were these rules that were passed and things that had changed. And of course, it's going to be different from now on. But the same people had the same mindsets and were living in the same places. And therefore, who controls behavior? Who controls attitudes? Well, that's education, and revelation has to happen for actual hearts to change. And then that causes transformation and longevity. That hadn't happened. That wasn't happening. And so we see this oppression still, and they're almost laughing as if to say, oh, as if it's changed. And that went, I mean, you know, that is so similar as what was going on in Sierra Leone as we see here in Jamaica and in various places across the Caribbean. And so you can feel I mean, in this, what she's trying to show here, you've got this, like at one point she says, doesn't she, that they weren't laughed at when they were poor. Like they all kind of were on the same level when they were poor, but as soon as money comes into it, that's what shifted. And so when the fire happened, I mean, the anger, the aggression, the violence around that night is just awful. And then that last little part when her friend Tia, what was her friend called? I don't remember her friend's name. Is it Tia or something like that, isn't it?
Tia.
When she throws she sees her. Oh, that really got me, because she sees her and there's this hope rises in her. Like, oh, maybe she's my way out. Maybe she is the answer. I can go and live with her. Like, even though they've not been friends and all that had happened, and then next thing she's whacked with a rock and is ill for however long. She's ill for a long time, wasn't she, after that? That was really sad. I felt so sad for her in that part. Yeah. And again, that was a reflection of just something so much bigger, where there's these little glimmers of hope. Suddenly a rock hits you in the head, like a reminder of, okay, and then you get the rock and the breaking and the blood, and it's not over. It's like this constant reminder throughout the story. Yes. Jess, have you got anything else to say about part one?
No, I think we've pretty much covered everything that I was thinking to say, and all the sort of themes and everything. I found it quite difficult to get my head around, like as you say, all the different politics and who, you know, and everything, not having any direct kind of you know, anything to do with that area of the world or anything. I was a bit lost, to be honest, reading something and thinking, right, okay, so that's okay, right, you know, rather than just reading it through, I had to sort of keep reading back and thinking, oh no, that's, you know, and getting it straight in my own head. But yeah, no, just the level of violence as well that she had to witness, and just that feeling. I just had this feeling of just she just was never safe, you know, even in her own home. You know,
Yeah.
those that we've just talked about before, the sort of shadows and the whispering
Yeah.
sounds, and the just, you know, at any moment something is going to go horribly wrong, you know. It just had that feeling to me, that sort of suspense almost, you know, almost like a horror movie when it's set in like some beautiful paradise, but you know by the music that there's something in the bushes, and it just gave me
Yeah.
that kind of feeling, you know, that sort of sinister background feeling, you know. Yeah, yeah,
Mm. Because at one point she says it again, this little tiny thing where she said, I felt safe, like in her bed. That was the last, did she say it's the last time I felt safe? There's a moment when she does feel safe, and then it made me then think about when she tells Rochester later about the time when she saw the rats in her room and she's staring at the rats, but never told anybody because she thought, if I don't tell anybody, then maybe it wasn't real. So she never felt safe, did she?
yeah,
She just never
yeah,
felt
that's
safe.
what I thought. She
And
just never did.
and then there's this whole, I just was overwhelmed by her. Something I wrote down was that I felt that she never matured. She never gained independence. She was constantly looking for something or someone to hold her up, to care for her, to and oh, her name's gone out of my head. All the witch lady, the witchcraft lady. What's her name?
Yeah, I can't remember
Chris-
either.
Christophine. That right?
Christophine, thank you. I should have all the little characters like I used to do with my kids in front of me. Christophine even says it. She's like, just get yourself out of bed, get dressed. But if you think about the very beginning, she even has a stick, doesn't she? Like a stick with two nails in, and they take the nails out, but then she keeps the stick with her. And then, yeah, with her dependency on then this man, this Rochester, this stranger, then this dependency on Christophine, and anyone really who is there to help her. She, and even to the end when that's not even her choice. Grace Poole does everything. So I almost feel like nobody ever let her grow up. Nobody ever, she never had the room to become independent and free. She
Mm.
never, you know, she thought that money had given her this sense of independence, but she's almost like this kind of, you know, this teenager who had got rich when she was young and never really had to do much for herself, but it was almost forced upon her. But I was like, man, from the stick at the beginning to Grace Poole at the end, you never really get to see her just be her. And that's almost what Christophine is trying to get her to do. She's like, go, take the money, just take some money and go and leave, be free. But she doesn't do it, does she? I'm jumping ahead again, sorry.
No, yeah, I agree. I think she just doesn't have that level of, because I suppose she never really had in her childhood a safe person, because her mom wasn't that to her, and she just didn't have anyone, did she, to lay that foundation with
Right.
her then, for her then to go on and be independent and confident. So she's then always looking for somebody to sort of hang on to for that support, isn't she? And yeah,
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 yeah. Because our children gain independence from nurture, from love, from
exactly.
closeness, from that you know, just being having that trusted adult who you're loved and you're able to grow,
Exactly.
and then you can spread your wings, etc. You know, and she just never had that. I'm
Yeah,
right, and that's hard.
it's like she was always looking for that parent adult figure that was going to keep her
Yes.
safe, that was going to tell her what to do, or whatever, because she
Mm,
didn't have that in her childhood.
yeah, so sad. Yeah.
That go back to the culture of the day too, though, that women, and I don't know, I haven't studied it this much, but were women more reliant on someone to care for them versus like independent outside of the home living? I don't know.
I mean, Christophine, she kind of puts it down, doesn't she? So she says, what does she say? I've got 3 children, all different dads. And she's just like, I'm doing what I want. Now that's a different reflection. I guess in British society, then married, you were finding a suitor, etc. But still independence was encouraged within the community, or you had spinsters, aka Charlotte Mason, who were completely independent and just did their own thing. So I found it unusual. I found her, I mean, it was indicative really of her upbringing and whether we get into nature nurture, but I just thought she never had a chance. She just didn't have a chance. And even when she got together with Rochester, it was all like this strong, crazy desire, and it wasn't love and nurture. It just wasn't.
Well, they had no relationship. That's what was bizarre.
No.
You're ready to go to that, but they met, and if it's all accurate how he said it, he was sick for 3 weeks, and then they were married.
Right.
Like they didn't even know each other, so all they had was a physical relationship.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's jump into part 2, which is the biggest section of mine. It's kind of from page 55 up to, 141. So this is the biggest part of the book, really, isn't it? So we can jump around wherever here. You guys jump in with a bit that stood out to you. I'm looking at the time. So like Shannon's just said, we've got that whole, obviously, the story of the marriage there, him being sick. And I don't know if anybody's worked out the time, like how long their honeymoon period was, or what was, but it didn't feel long, but it felt like a lot happened. So I'm not sure if anybody else figured out or had an idea in their head of how long that period of time was when they were together in the house. But I mean, tons goes on here. So anyone like to jump in at any point, a bit you want to talk about from this second section?
I thought it was interesting how the author gave him a voice, and quite a long voice, through the middle of it, and that we get all the story through his eyes. I don't know what it does for us to sort of to see it that way, but again, the way I read so quickly, I started to read and I was like, oh, hang on a minute, we've changed voice, so I had to go right back, back a couple of pages and start reread it again because I was reading it in the wrong way.
In her voice, okay.
So it's an interesting take. I like to look back at the author and think, what was she writing it for? Was she writing it about colonialism? Was she doing it for Jane Eyre? Was she doing it for the readers of Jane Eyre? Because I mean, it was written in the 50s or something, wasn't it? And everyone had thought she was dead, the author. And then she came back with this book, 60s. There we go, 1966.
They thought she was dead.
Yeah, it's the introduction to my book told me.
Oh, that's well done for reading the introduction, Demelda.
Actually, no, it wasn't this copy. It was a copy I got out of my parents' library, and then I had to give it them back. It was the she had written books. She wasn't very well known, and then and everyone had thought that she'd just died, but she'd gone to be a recluse in Dorset, I think. So and then this came out of it. So yeah, it's interesting. She's an interesting character, I think. I didn't go much further than that, but I sort of think, why did she write the book? And then why did she give him this voice to tell us Antoinette's story? That's
there was one part when him and Christophine are talking, and I was just I'm like, oh, come on, I'm done now with you two. And I'm like, this is like go, and when he's like repeating everything she says, and I know there's literary devices going on, all sorts, but there's a part when he just keeps repeating, and I know what's going on, like I can see what she's doing, and he's trying to process, but it's so long, that part. I'm like, come on, let's move past that. It's the only time really I wanted to move the book on. But yeah, no, that's interesting. I didn't realize. I must read the introduction.
Yes,
I shall go back and read the introduction.
It Yeah.
Sorry, I've just found that
that's all right.
introduction in the front of my book as well, telling all about how she was, a recluse in Cornwall and all that. That's so interesting, and I'd never read that little bit in my book, and I've had this book for, I don't know, over 25 years.
Oh, wow. Showed you how much. I remember when I wrote the introduction to Modern Miss Mason, and I'm like, is anyone ever going to read this? I put my heart and soul into it. We should read introductions, shouldn't we? So what about all the dreaming? I thought that when the dream about the forest, I don't know if that's from part one, but anyway, she dreamt about the forest, and there's a phrase that, again, there's foreshadowing in there, isn't there, where she knows she is with somebody who hates her, and she's trudging through the forest, and she's concerned about her skirt, and then he says, "Not here, not now." And then he actually says it, doesn't he? Later on, he repeats that phrase when in a real situation. And then there's this whole thing about the skirt. I don't know if you picked up on. We all pick up on different things, isn't they? Where Rochester complains about Christophine not picking up her skirt and saying why isn't she doing that? It's going to get dirty. And Antoinette says, no, actually, you don't pick it up. And I think it's like a sign of respect or relax. I'm trying to remember what it was. Here's my narrations coming into play here. And then there was a few other things, and this a little tiny theme that gets repeated. So there's the dress in the dream and the skirt, and there's the Christophine skirt, and they talk about this a lot, about this kind of trailing, this idea of the trailing skirt getting dirty and what that represents. Just a little tiny thing that I picked up on, which I thought was interesting. But she does dream a lot, doesn't she?
I feel like the dreams are theirs, and in reflections of each character's internal. Well, I think it's really just her who dreams, although I think he dreams too.
Yes.
Rochester. But it's just another viewpoint of their sense of being lost, of disoriented. Both of them are uncertain of themselves.
Yeah, they're both
She
lost.
knows how she got there, and I think he wonders how he got there.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and then she says the same thing when she's in England, doesn't she? Like, how did I get here? I found it. I know I'm jumping into part 3 here, but I just found that part really interesting where she doesn't believe she's in England when she's in the house. She talks about it being a cardboard house, and everything is like red and brown, and which is very quintessential of the homes of the times. And she doesn't believe she's in England. No, when she takes her out for the day, and she secretly buys that knife, that's when she thinks, oh yeah, we went to England that day, because she actually got out of the house. Oh, sorry, Carol, I want to read your comment here. If she,
I didn't think it.
Sorry, go on, Erica. I'll read that in a second.
No, I was just gonna say, I was just making a connection with the oh gosh, it slipped my mind. All right, I'll come back to it.
Was I?
The light bulb will
What
go
was
off
I
in my head.
saying? We've all got. It doesn't help because I'm jumping all over the place. Sorry, that was probably my fault.
All right, we were talking about her in the cardboard box and not believing she was in England. Oh, okay, the miller's daughter. I wonder if that's what the picture she had in mind that England would look like. That was my thought.
Absolutely, I think it was. And she had this view, and so and this is kind of an outside view. But so she doesn't believe. Well, she still doesn't believe the house in England. But she said we went to England that day when we went out for the day. Yeah, that is interesting. Carol's just saying, if she picked up her skirt to avoid it getting dirty, people might think she was poor. Yes, that's right. And that it was her only skirt. That's right, Carol. That was part of it as well. Yeah.
Yes,
so if
that
you
was
have
it,
to
wasn't
pick
it?
up,
Yeah.
yes, if you
It
have
was
to
like
pick
a
up your
sign of your
skirt,
wealth, wasn't it? That you can afford to dirty your clothes, and
yes. So
yeah.
it's okay. I've got another one. It's
Yeah.
fine. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I thought that was interesting. Excuse me. All right. Anything else from part 2?
She really wants to be in England though, doesn't she? Like before she
Yes.
gets there, like she's again, it's all part of this sort of like lost feeling or not knowing where it is that you actually want to be. Neither of them want to be where they are, but neither of them want to be back where they were, if that makes sense. And
Yeah.
I just remembered a conversation that she had with Christophine, where Christophine is like, "How do you even know England exists?" Like,
Yeah.
you know, but she's like, she's got this picture in her mind from paintings and from probably like sources that aren't particularly reliable, that it will be okay there.
Mm.
But yeah, she just doesn't know where she wants to be.
Because she even says when she's having that conversation with Christophine, when she goes and when Christophine moves away and she goes on a horse and goes to visit her, she's having that conversation about leaving him. And even she says, I want to go to England. I want to save some money and go to England. She almost says it not in conjunction with Rochester. Like, it's almost like, well, I'm going to go to England. Like that was always an idea of hers and always something, this romantic ideal in her head. And so, which makes it even a bigger deal, the fact that she doesn't believe the house is England, because she says they got lost on the way on the boat, didn't they? So she says on the boat there was some trouble, there's something happened, and they got diverted. So we didn't end up in England. And she kind of makes up this whole story in her head.
I wonder if her kind of obsession with getting to England and all that is to do again with wanting somewhere where she can feel safe, even if she doesn't realise
Yeah.
that herself. Maybe it's, you know, she's obviously perhaps built it up in her head as this is going to be the place where I'll finally be at peace or whatever, and perhaps it's something to do with that as well.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure. Yeah.
I just felt Christophine was the most sane character.
Did you?
She seemed to be the only person with clarity.
Mm. Yeah, well, I mean, she knew who she was and she didn't show fear, that's for sure. And she always had stuff to say. I mean, when they all started leaving, it did make me sad when she left. Although when for Antoinette, everybody started leaving, didn't they? So all these kind of trusted female people in her life, right from the, well, not even always trusted, but just people who were constant in her life for a while. You know, first a mum, that happens with her mother, and then various people are leaving and going, but the one person who remained is Christophine. And so when that very end bit, when the one of the servant girls says she's leaving, Christophine's leaving, I was like, oh no, the last person she's got. And she does seem to,
And I think her
she is
character is very
strong,
ironic.
Sorry, say again.
I was saying Christophine's character is really ironic in face of of so here you have the wealthy and trauma and emotionally, mentally compromised or something. And for all their wealth and their whiteness, they're lost and confused and emotionally struggling. And here's Christophine, who is Black and not as poor as the other Black characters in it. Like, she has some level of independence, but still obviously in a different class system than Rochester and Antoinette. And yet she's got clarity, she's got confidence, she's independent.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Interesting. All right.
I was just going to say she's got freedom, hasn't she? She actually wasn't bound by society's rules.
No,
like,
she wasn't. That's something, she knew who she was.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and she didn't suffer fools gladly, did she? She just, I found her quite amusing at times as well, and just the way she would threaten her obey stuff on obey, trying to pronounce it right. The chicken look feathers in the corner of the room, and the various things that they would find, and the threats she would make. But she was I listened to a bit of it on, there's an audio recording on YouTube. I don't know if anybody found that. It's quite, did you listen to it, Demalza? Because then you get all this dramatized version, which I thought was incredible. And I
I've not heard
listened.
dramatized one.
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, with all different voices, but the way that the narrator. Oh, I'll have to post it for people. But the way the narrator did Christophine's voice, it helped me understand her, and she still kind of portrays her as very strong, very sure about herself. It's incredible. Yeah, I'll post it in the replay so you can all have a listen. It's actually done really well. It's had a lot of downloads. I'm sure a lot of students have listened to it.
I did
And
find one
listened.
because I needed something to slow me down, but it wasn't lots of different voices, I don't think. So
Yeah, it's a very good one. Really good. Yeah, enjoyed. Shannon saying, were they okay until Daniel sent the letter? Good question. What do you guys think? Did the letter shake everything up? Would they have been fine if that letter hadn't have come? Good question, Shannon. What do you think? That's where the drama really
I
started.
definitely think the letter changed things.
It did.
I was so annoyed that he read it and that he went, and of course he couldn't. His curiosity got the better of him. He couldn't
Of course.
resist in
Yeah.
the end. But I don't think things would have been perfect sans letter, but I think it definitely sealed their fate.
I think the secrets were so dark. The secrets are so dark, and the community was so unique that it had to come out eventually. Something was going to come out somewhere. I thought that was quite an interesting way to do it, though, with that character. So maybe Shannon, they were relatively okay until that point, but that just was I think things were getting a little bit weak, weren't they? Because his feelings weren't real.
Well,
They were
yeah,
very veneer.
marry someone I don't even know and the different cultures and all background, but once you have the negative thoughts kind of planted into you, like, and you engage them and believe them, I think he couldn't get over that. He actually, I think, makes her crazy, but he probably thinks that she was crazy.
Yeah. I mean, this is what I was kind of saying earlier. I found the madness part of, so right from the beginning, we hear that it's in the family. We this is part of the narrative. It's in the family. It's genetic. It's whatever. It's there. There are traits of it throughout their family legacy, and so you almost get this self-fulfilling prophecy, because it starts with knowledge, and then we see it in the mother, and then because she even mentions very early in the book how she used to hear her mum talking to herself. Which classically was like first sign of madness. It's something I remember as children we used to say things like that, and then you just get this pattern of that being repeated, that understanding, that knowledge had been said to her, spoken to her, written to her, and then spoken to her husband, and then it's almost like there's this pattern of profession, and then of saying this is what's going to happen, and then the practice is get her locked up, because that's what we do with people who are mad, which is takes her to her end, doesn't it? Yeah, I thought that was interesting. I mean, that what we know now about mental health and how it used to be treated is worlds apart, but just the trapping and because the story, because at first when they go to part 3, are we in part 3? Are we? We're in part 3 now. We'll wrap up here. When she's described as just being in this room with Grace Poole, and she goes to sleep, and I just think, oh, is she just kind of relatively normal, but Rochester wants to keep her locked away? But when we hear the story of the knife and then the biting, and then she starts to talk about how she walks around the house. Then I go, oh, okay, yeah, this she really is the mad woman in the attic. That's when I was like, yeah, it's turned now. It really has turned. So last section then. Can I just I'll get one of you guys start talking. I just need to go grab my power lead because I didn't realize my battery was so low and it's not in the room. Yeah, anybody want to start talking about part 3? I can still hear you. I just need to go to the next door room. Somebody talk about part 3 for me and I'll
I didn't think about it until you were just saying it, but she really does become her mother, doesn't she?
yeah,
Attacking those caring for her, and yeah,
she
I
does.
didn't think of
Yeah, there's a repetition, isn't there?
that. I
The
remember her
family.
talking quite a bit about the dress, wanting to pick out her dress. And I don't know, for me, I must have missed something in the book because I couldn't comprehend the meaning, I guess the significance of why she's fixated on her red dress, because I didn't remember there earlier in the book him liking her in a red dress. Was it just the dress she felt confident in?
She just talk about a red ribbon, doesn't she? Sorry, I'm nearly there. Hang on a sec. She talks about a red ribbon at some point. Does anybody else remember the dress mentioned earlier?
No, I don't remember specifically a red dress being mentioned. Obviously, there's all the theme of dresses and skirts and things, isn't there? But not specifically, I don't think. I am struggling though because I did read this like 2 months ago, and you're going
No.
through it trying, but I don't think there was.
I'm looking. There's the thing about the red dress at the very end, and she's talking about Sandy as well.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, there's a
I
bit.
thought
Yeah.
that was odd, the throw in of Sandy. So I know that that Daniel makes that allegation against her in the letter to Rod.
We've lost you, Erica. Oh no, she's back. You're just breaking up a little bit, Erica.
Her on the street. The alleged romance or affair between her and Sandy, compelling. I don't know that it needed to be in there. I don't know that it added or that it, I don't know, for me was not very believable.
Sorry, we lost you a little bit there, Erica. We missed the first
Oh.
half of what you said. It kind of just disappeared. Sorry.
I'm so sorry.
That's okay. You're doing very well. Just
I was saying I didn't really buy into her affair with Sandy, and I don't know that added to the story.
no, I didn't get that bit really. I was like,
Yeah.
why is that in there?
I agree
Yeah.
with you. I thought that was an odd little kind of snippet to have been inserted that I didn't really feel needed to be there or brought anything to the story really. Yeah, it was a bit odd, that bit.
It was. I'm just trying to find a bit with the red ribbon. I just remember it. I can see where on the page it was because it stood out to me. Anyway, there is a bit somewhere where she talks about a red ribbon.
I will say to Grace Poole's, credit, I was surprised that she had compassion on her and took her on a secret outing.
Yes, I know. It's probably the booze though. It's all the clear liquid that she had.
Well, to Grace Poole, I mean, what kind of life did she have to be basically babysitting a mad lady in the attic for years? That was kind of sad. And then it goes back to my first kind of, I guess I don't know if it's a question, but if he'd just left her with money somewhere, she could have maybe had some sort of life. But if everyone knew, they must not have known he was married, because if they did, then they would have wondered where she was. So no one knew that he had a wife, at least in Jane Eyre. So it was just bizarre why he could not have had her live a different life. Man, that was the story. That had to be the story, but it's still
Yeah, I
Which- I
agree.
know.
It would have been much easier if he'd have kind of left her there where she was with, I don't know, some trusted kind of servants that he paid to look after her and kind of kept her, you know, a continent away rather than bring her into his home and put her in the attic. I mean, it's quite a strange thing to do, really, isn't it? If you're trying to hide somebody and something to then bring them so close into your sort of life. I don't know. Yeah, I agree.
I know.
But then again, there would not have been a story with her if it had, yeah, it had been that way.
Well, and he does say that none of the servants could be trusted. And you kind of see that a little bit in some of the characters of their servants that they go into. So I think he knew that that was a non-option,
True, true. Yeah.
unless he
Yeah,
got an
that's
English
true.
servant.
Yeah, but even Grace Poole isn't, you know, she's human. She has to sleep, she has to shower, she has to do things. And I can't imagine what life, I don't care how much he paid, that's your life. Your life is stifled because of what you're doing in secrecy. But anyway, that was just bizarre to
Yeah,
me.
I always felt really sorry for Grace Poole and Jane Eyre. Like I always really felt for her and thought, gosh, what a life to have. No wonder you drink gin every night or whatever, you know, because it's
Yeah.
just horrendous, isn't it, really? And to have there was nobody else. It wasn't like she could have a day off and hand over to somebody else. It's yeah, horrible life.
And what does,
I
because
always got the impression Grace was old.
Oh, sorry.
No, I was saying I always got the impression, like I always pictured Grace Poole, I don't know, like in her 50s or something. So sorry, that's not old, but I mean like older. I didn't picture her as a young woman. I always assumed Grace was a more mature woman, which in the context of that age and time, you know, she would have been more matronly.
Yeah.
But I
Yeah, I
don't know if
don't know
that's
what I
accurate.
pictured
Maybe
her.
Grace Poole was young.
Maybe she was young. Yeah, maybe. Yeah, because Rochester does it in that letter, he offers her like triple the money or something. But yeah, they end up giving her then
Mr.
gives
Field
her
won't give her
double.
triple.
Yeah. And she counts it and keeps it in a bag inside her dress. Oh, yeah, interesting. Okay. Anything else from part 3? Otherwise, I will wrap up with a little reading from part 3. But do share if anything else that you were like just must say this, want to point this bit out. Do let us know. So, and obviously when I put the replay out, I'd love you to put just, add your comments, share stuff in there as well. It is helpful for people if they're coming to the book a little bit later, or hopefully it'll be a resource for anybody who wants to read it at some point. So this is in my book, it's on page 155, and this is where she's it's at the end, and she almost makes this list of images which reflect on her childhood and life. And I thought this was quite interesting. This really stood out to me. I sat there quietly. I don't know how long I sat. Then I turned round and saw the sky. It was red, and all my life was in it. I saw the grandfather clock and Aunt Cora's patchwork, all colours. I saw the orchids and the cephalotis and the jasmine and the tree of life in flames. I saw the chandelier and the red carpet downstairs and the bamboos and the tree ferns, the gold ferns and the silver and the soft green velvet of the moss on the garden wall. I saw my doll's house and the books and the picture of the miller's daughter. I heard the parrot call as he did when he saw a stranger. Kiesla, Kiesla, and the man who hated me was calling too. Bertha, Bertha. The wind caught my hair and it streamed out like wings. It might bear me up, I thought, if I jumped to those hard stones. But when I looked over the edge, I saw the pool at Colubri. Tia was there. She beckoned to me, and when I hesitated, she laughed. I'd heard her say, "You frightened?" And I heard the man's voice, "Bertha, Bertha." All this I saw and heard in a fraction of a second, and the sky so red. Someone screamed, and I thought, why did I scream? I called Tia and jumped and woke. All right. Well, I think we probably should. Shannon said, I looked at the location of Wide Sargasso Sea. I'm sure there is a reason for the name. There is. Did you find what it was, Shannon? Is she going to tell us? I did
Well,
start to research.
I looked it up, and it just said it's the sea is bordered by the four ocean currents and has no shore. It's difficult to navigate, and it's a clockwise circulating system of currents. And it in the ocean, it is also the ocean that separates the Caribbean from the England. But I just thought it was
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I did start to look at it, but I didn't get anywhere with it really. Wonderful. Okay, well, I think we'll call that a wrap on Wide Sargasso Sea. Thank you so much. I know you were so patiently waited 2 months to discuss it, so I do appreciate that. Bear with me a second. Let me just grab the next book. Wheel across here. Oh, my chair went down then. Hang on a second. Got a broken desk chair. Okay. So that is it. Thank you for reading and joining us. Thank you for those watching on the replay as well. Really appreciate any comments and quotes and anything you want to share. We would love to hear for any future replay viewers or just readers or people who are getting involved with the book club. Our next book is this one, The Storied Life of AJ Fikri by Gabrielle Zevin. Really great book. So we'll be reading this over what we in May and June, right? Yes, May and June. I can't believe next thing we're going to be reading is poetry in the summer, and this year is flying by. So that's your next book. It is available on Audible if you're finding that a little bit easier in this season, so you can have a listen to that one and read it. And we will discuss the first half in May and our second half in June before we jump into our summer of poetry. But guys, thank you for joining us this evening. Thank you for your contribution. And you can now put those books back on your shelf for another 25 years, unless you get your kids to read them or something. But love chatting with you guys about books, and happy reading. Have a great rest of the week, and you'll hear from me, I'm sure, very soon. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.